A parallel church is being born, a grotesque copy of the true Catholic Church. Altars transformed into stages, priests who concede everything, doctrines watered down to please the world. Blessed Emmerich had seen it in a vision, and Vigano today openly denounces it. The heart of faith is under siege. Stay with me until the end, because what is happening is not a detail. It is the sign that the decisive battle has already begun. Vigano has decided to return to the public stage with a text that has the flavor of a battle. On his official website, he published a letter inspired by an essay by Abbot Claude Barth, who analyzed the approach of the new pontiff, Leo XIV, underlining the continuities and fractures with his predecessor. Barth, with a frankness rare for a clergyman, warned against the illusion of invoking liturgical freedom as a bargaining chip with those who govern the Church today. The abbot recalls that already in the 19th century, French monarchists, although hostile to revolutionary conquests, ended up demanding freedom of the press and teaching from their very adversaries, a paradox that is repeated today in the ecclesiastical field. Accepting synodal logic to gain some margin of survival for the traditional right means legitimizing a system that by its very nature aims to dissolve faith into a mosaic of sensitivities and preferences. Vigano, taking up and amplifying this analysis, points the finger at the so-called moderates who dream of regaining the ancient missal only if they remain silent about doctrinal deviations. This is a grave error, warns the Archbishop, because it reduces the liturgy to an aesthetic affectation and separates form from substance. From this perspective, Leo XIV becomes the testing ground. Those hoping for an easing of restrictions risk falling into the trap of compromise, while the heart of the matter is not tolerance, but the truth of the Catholic faith. At the heart of the argument is the so-called synodality, presented as a magic word capable of healing every division, but which in reality turns out to be a noose. Vigano warns against this trap. The ancient rite is tolerated only if reduced to folklore, like a folkloristic costume to be exhibited in certain contexts, provided it does not call into question the doctrinal framework of the new ecclesiology. It's the old trick of conditional tolerance. A few crumbs are left, provided the faithful give up proclaiming the whole truth. This exchange is dishonest, insists the Archbishop, because the post-conciliar Church never really grants dignity to the traditional rite, but tolerates it with ill-concealed intolerance. He treats it like many other religious expressions, without ever recognizing its theological and spiritual superiority. It's like a noose contract. The faithful can kneel before the altar if they promise not to say aloud that that sacrifice contains a doctrine incompatible with the fashions of the moment. Whoever accepts this logic condemns himself, because he implicitly recognizes that the liturgy can exist without its doctrine, and that therefore the truth of faith is a dispensable accessory. Here, Vigano's polemical core emerges. Reducing the liturgy to a question of aesthetics is, according to him, a subtle and lethal deception. It's not a matter of choosing between a more elegant ornament or a more solemn chant, as if one were at the theater. The beauty of the Roman liturgy is such precisely because it reflects the truth it preserves. Stripping away the sacred elements, as was done with the Montinian reform, was not a restyling, but a blow to the heart of the faith. A prominent cardinal recently reminded us of this with harsh words. Depriving the Mass of its deepest signs is not painless, because form always expresses content, and an impoverished form inevitably prepares us for an impoverished faith. Vigano insists. This aesthetic reduction serves the strategy of the new era. Certain circles are permitted to maintain sumptuous vestments and lit candles, as long as they don't dare claim that these symbols are inseparable from traditional doctrine. It is the theatricalization of the sacred, which becomes a spectacle devoid of substance. For the Archbishop, this is where the decisive battle is being played out. If we accept that the liturgy can be stripped of its dogmatic and moral force, then we open the door to every abuse, even to the point of justifying Eucharistic rites emptied of the Catholic faith itself. The so-called moderate conservatives, those priests and lay people who choose to remain silent rather than compromise the small privileges they have received, end up in the crosshairs. Vigano describes them as divided men, incapable of truly taking sides. On the one hand, they fear losing the ancient Mass. On the other, they don't want to face Rome's hostility. So they take refuge in a strategy of silence, convinced that time and diplomacy will be able to soften the leaders. But this caution, the Archbishop warns, translates into complicity. Compromise becomes their hallmark, and they end up neither truly Catholic nor truly synodal, suspended in a sterile limbo. According to Vigano, the Holy See tolerates these conservatives because it knows they will never ask for more. They are allowed to parade in solemn vestments as long as they don't raise uncomfortable questions. Anyone who dares to raise their voices is immediately reprimanded by the system's gatekeepers, prelates more concerned with their own careers than the fate of the Church. The result is a silenced community, cultivating the illusion of being respected, while in reality it is merely tolerated. In this scenario, the Archbishop warns, the temptation to remain silent is tantamount to betrayal, and the price of this weakness will be paid by the souls of the faithful. At this point, Vigano recalls the voice of the Fathers of the Church, and in particular Saint Vincent of Lerins, who established a criterion as simple as it is inexorable. Only that which has been believed always, everywhere, and by everyone is authentically Catholic. A clear principle, which leaves no room for passing fads or pastoral improvisation. If a teaching fails this triple test, it must be rejected as error, no matter how much it is applauded from official pulpits. This reminder is not a scholarly exercise, but a concrete appeal for our time. Synodality, with its inclusive slogans, cannot claim to be always, everywhere, and by all. On the contrary, it presents itself as a rupture with the continuity of faith. For Vigano, rediscovering St. Vincent of Lerins means arming oneself with a sound criterion in the midst of the current chaos. It is an invitation not to be dazzled by the proclamations of false pastors, not to give in to the temptation to consider Catholic what is merely the fruit of human compromises. Tradition thus becomes the only safe harbor for those who wish to avoid being shipwrecked in today's confusion. Vigano warns, the battle has begun, and the test is Leo XIV. It will be up to him to demonstrate whether he truly intends to defend the Catholic faith or whether he will prefer to bless the excesses of clerical progressivism. A clear gesture, an act of authority would be enough, silencing the voices that spread errors, stopping scandalous liturgies, restoring dignity to the sacred. So far, however, the signs are not encouraging, and it is here that the Archbishop reiterates his appeal: not anger, not resignation, but prayer and sacrifice, because the salvation of souls is the true battleground. What do you think? If you liked the video, comment Amen. God bless you.